You probably already know how many people who make videos on YouTube always do that exact same old thing where they say something like, "Oh my goodness, only 5% of you watching this video are actually subscribed to my channel. So please make sure to hit that subscribe button right now." I was actually getting ready to do that exact same thing myself, but then I decided to actually look at the numbers, and I realized that a pretty large amount of you are already subscribed to the channel. Anyway, the main point that I wanted to talk about today is that if you are not subscribed yet, please think about clicking that button. I am honestly just really curious to find out how much one of those shiny silver creator plaques actually weighs when you hold it in your hands. Has anyone else out there ever even wondered about that specific detail? Alright, let us get right into the scary story for today. This particular story comes directly to us from the website Reddit, and it was found on a specific page called the r/creepystories subreddit, where it was posted by a user who goes by the name Trash. Just looking at the author's username, I am already getting myself ready for some kind of crazy, totally unexpected twist at the end, so we are definitely in for a real treat today. The basic idea and starting point of the story is this. In the small town where the narrator lives, whenever kids reach the age of 18 years old, they tragically end up killing their own parents. The narrator has just discovered the deeply disturbing reason behind why this happens. The people in the town used to call them the miracle generation. It seems that having children was practically forbidden in this specific town for some unknown reason. And whenever, by some stroke of pure luck or destiny, a child was actually born into the world, they would only survive for a mere 3 or 4 days before passing away. So, when an entire class of infants seemingly appeared out of nowhere all at once, that is exactly why our town decided to give us the nickname of the Miracles. If we move forward in time by 18 years, we get to the point where a boy named Seth Daniels did something completely unthinkable to his parents. And when I say he did something bad, I do not mean something like accidentally setting their house on fire while they were sleeping inside, or giving them a deadly poison while they were resting in their beds. I am talking about a real, brutal, and violent killing. According to the local newspaper, which is a publication that my mother reads with an almost feverish and intense level of focus, the bodies of the victims were savagely disfigured, looking as if they had been torn apart by a wild animal. I knew Seth very well because we grew up together in the same neighborhood, practically acting like next-door neighbors, with our family houses being located directly across the street from each other. Seth would often invite me over to his house to watch Power Rangers on television, and he would passionately sing and dance along to the opening theme song. Seth absolutely adored his parents. The media outlets in the town went completely silent about the entire matter, with the exception of a single, very insignificant article in the local paper. I suspected that nobody wanted to voice the unspoken thoughts that were swirling around in everyone's minds. But it just did not add up in my head. This supposed curse had allowed us to live for 17 whole years, and now it was demanding something in return. And why would it specifically target the children to inflict violence upon their own parents? Why compel a child to commit such a horrific act? There was one particular detail that immediately caught my attention. It was Seth's 18th birthday, the very same day. I knew this for a fact because he had been excitedly talking about his upcoming birthday party at school. I mean, I am not exactly a genius, but what kind of kid eagerly anticipates celebrating a birthday on the exact same day they are allegedly planning to commit a horrific act against their parents? I started asking a lot of questions, as nobody else seemed to be raising any concerns, and I simply refused to believe that Seth would willingly engage in something so monstrous. My mother explained to me that the Daniels case was far too gruesome and horrible for me to really comprehend, so I decided that I needed to do some investigating all by myself. You see, we live in a very small town where everyone knows everyone. Finn Novak, who happens to be the son of the local sheriff, was my main way to get inside. It cost me $20 and a promise to introduce him to my older brother to gain access to his father's private office. The whole operation felt incredibly secretive and sneaky, like something out of a spy thriller movie. I genuinely felt like one of those detectives you see on television shows. The documents were still surprisingly accessible, tucked away in the top drawer beneath his desk. Daniels. I retrieved the folder, discreetly gesturing for Finn to keep watch at the door. He shot me an annoyed look, but then proceeded to engage the receptionist in a charming conversation while I delved into the autopsy reports. After I took a quick look at the papers, I desperately wished that I had a magic eraser to wipe the contents completely out of my memory. I looked up at Finn, and the boy was making rather dramatic hand gestures, the exact kind of wild movements you would see in a Saturday morning cartoon. "Are you out of your mind? Get out of here." Before I could even respond to him, he pointed behind him, his eyes wide with alarm. "My dad's coming," he mouthed silently. I nodded, forcing myself to remain calm despite the unsettling sensation churning in my stomach. I managed to snap several photos of the notes before making a swift exit from the room, closing the door gently behind me. Finn hadn't exactly expressed much interest in what I was looking for, but he still joined me, sitting on a bench in the center of the town square, with a Starbucks latte precariously balanced on his lap. He leaned in close, glancing at my phone as he loudly slurped through his straw. "So, what's the verdict? Did he do it?" I found it difficult to answer without feeling nauseous, recalling my meager breakfast from earlier. "Yes," I finally managed to say, staring at the image on my phone screen. My mother was right. The autopsy notes were horrific because there was hardly anything left to examine. In my mind, Seth had perhaps stabbed his parents, but the reality was far more brutal. He had torn them apart. The reports detailed the state of the remains, which were scant. A single torso and a head. That was it. The victims were identified as Sonia, age 38, and Oliver, aged 39, Daniels. The accompanying photographs were in black and white, making them barely discernible to the human eye. Two small, square images were stapled to the end of the report, but they were seared into my memory forever. A lone head, a torso, that was all that remained of Seth's parents, implying he possessed the inhuman strength to rip them to pieces. The thought was already forming in my mind when I showed the photo to Finn, who let out a sharp intake of breath. "Holy hell," he muttered, handing me his empty cup and squinting at the screen. "The kid actually butchered them." "He didn't butcher them," I choked out, a wave of denial washing over me. I couldn't defend Seth when the evidence was so starkly presented. He hadn't merely killed them. He had dismembered them in a way no human, not even a highly intelligent serial killer, could. It was animalistic. The more I contemplated it, the sicker I felt. It wasn't until I was on my hands and knees, retching uncontrollably, that the true magnitude of the situation finally hit me. If Seth Daniels had randomly killed his parents, was I destined to meet the same fate eventually? It had to be the curse. There was no other rational explanation. I ceased my investigation, terrified of uncovering something I wouldn't be able to unsee. While murder motivated by emotion or circumstance is undeniably horrific, it is, at least, understandable. But when an external force compels you to act against your will, robbing you of your agency, there are no definitive answers, only an unending cascade of questions. Our town had been afflicted by an unseen entity that had systematically deprived us of our children. Could we have somehow offended it? By our very existence, had we provoked some all-seeing deity? Several days later, my mother informed me that Seth had been taken to a juvenile detention facility without even a court hearing. He had confessed immediately. "Yes, I killed my mother and father." Those were his exact words as he was led from his home, his hands bound behind his back, a pair of Ray-Ban sunglasses obscuring his eyes from the world. His words were callous and devoid of emotion, spoken in a monotone. He seemed utterly indifferent. As I watched him being paraded by the local news crews from my bedroom window, Seth bore an almost celebrity-like aura. The way he was manhandled amidst the flashing lights and microphones was jarring. Seth detested attention. Typically, if he was chosen to read aloud in class, his cheeks would flush a deep red, and he'd stumble through the passage on the verge of tears. The person I saw then was not the neighbor I knew. This version of him walked with his head held high, his movements precise and almost robotic as he calmly entered the back of a waiting SUV. Despite witnessing all of this, despite seeing Seth stand impassively before the cameras, I still couldn't shake the conviction that he wouldn't have done something like this. I acknowledge that murderers can often be the most unexpected individuals. Friends, family, people we grow up with and trust implicitly. But there was something about the Daniels incident that gnawed at me. My mother urged me to let it go when I began inquiring about this supposed curse and the exact circumstances of my own birth. During dinner one evening, I pushed too hard with my questions. She dropped her fork with a clatter, startling my twin brother, Freddie, who was seated opposite me. Freddie and I are fraternal twins and bear little resemblance to each other. Yet, that didn't deter our mother from attempting to dye my hair when I was younger to match Freddie's fiery red curls. My hair is naturally brown. Freddie is a redhead, and Noah, our younger sister, has blonde hair. Most people would find this unusual, but in our town, it wasn't uncommon for children not to resemble their parents, given the lengths some people went to in order to have children. It doesn't make any sense, I repeated for perhaps the third or fourth time, fully aware of my obsessive focus. Why now? If we truly are cursed, why wait 17 whole years, Mara? I speared some pasta with my fork, ignoring Freddie's annoyed glance. Mom cleared her throat, her lips hovering over the rim of her wine glass. When Dad works late, Mom indulges in wine. We're not supposed to tell him, but it's my business, I insisted. Seth was my friend. Freddie had already finished his meal and was periodically checking his gaming console. You didn't even like him. Remember when you called him a? This time I kicked him under the table. Judging by the jolt in his posture and the momentary widening of his eyes, it hurt him. We were 12, and he stole my doll. You still called him an asshole? Freddie said in a sing-song voice, his attention drifting back to his game. I actually played with him, and he only paid attention to you because he wanted to play on your DS. You called him a big-nosed freak. I shot back. So did you. Noah, our more demure younger sister, lowered her head to conceal her amusement. That's enough. Mom, who was already halfway through a bottle of wine, slammed her glass down on the table, her gaze fixed on mine. Mara, if you ask one more question about the Daniels case, I'm taking your phone for a week. Freddie snickered, but she turned her ire on him as well. That applies to you too. She stood up. I'm going upstairs. Whoever is left, please clear the dishes and make sure the kitchen is tidy before your father returns home. Freddie huffed childishly, crossing his arms. What about Noah? He gestured to her. She was giggling. I wasn't, Noah squeaked, judging by the sudden sound that escaped my brother's throat. Our younger sister had joined me in my teasing. Mom didn't respond, picking up her glass of wine and the entire bottle. She retreated upstairs as usual. Every night when Dad was working late, Mom would abandon us at the dinner table and engage in the same ritual she'd been performing since we were children. Armed with nothing but wine and a candle, Mom would lock herself in her bedroom until the early hours of the morning. When we were 10, Freddie and I attempted to sneak in and discover her secret. However, at that late hour, Mom had fallen asleep on the floor, the candles still casting a flickering glow. That night was no different. Mom vanished for the entire evening, and I took it upon myself to clear away the dinner plates. Freddie went to hang out with his friends, and Noah became completely engrossed in TikTok. Mom had a strict rule. No matter what, all our phones had to be handed in by 11 o'clock every night. This included all electronic devices, even game consoles. In fact, she went so far as to switch off the power outlets in our rooms, meaning no late-night gaming sessions of Mario Kart. I had anticipated we would eventually outgrow this rule, but that never happened. Freddie, being the golden child, had conveniently left his phone and console on the kitchen table before heading out to his friend's house. A rule he also wasn't supposed to break, but apparently, that rule didn't extend to him. I was perched on the kitchen counter, frowning at my phone screen, rereading the Daniels autopsy notes when Noah let out a shriek. The time was 11:01, meaning Noah was already violating the no-phone rule. I hopped off the counter, pausing to place my phone next to Freddie's before a thought struck me. Why was my immediate instinct to put my phone away? I attempted to pocket it when a sudden, throbbing pain erupted between my fingers. It felt like an electric shock, lasting only a few seconds, perhaps even less. My phone slipped from my grasp, but not before the lights above flickered and extinguished entirely, plunging me into darkness. Damn! The warm illumination from the hallway outside confirmed that only the kitchen had experienced a power surge. Mom had always harbored a deep-seated unease regarding technology. She only relented to getting us phones after persistent begging, and Freddie had purchased his Switch console himself with earnings from his part-time job. My gaze fell upon my mostly intact iPhone lying face down on the pastel pink tiles. I reached to retrieve it when the same painful sensation surged up my index finger. Mara, Noah's voice, high-pitched and startled, called from the lounge. I found her sitting on the floor, her phone clutched in her hands. Her eyes were wide, her lips stretched into a grin. "Look," she whispered. Following her gaze, I saw my sister holding her phone. At first, I saw nothing remarkable. She was watching a YouTube video, some kind of video essay about serial killers. "What? It's charging." Initially, I had no idea what she was referring to until my gaze landed on the charging symbol at the top of her screen, a lightning bolt indicating the charger was connected. But when I followed Noah's pointed finger, I glimpsed her phone charger on the other side of the room, still plugged into the wall socket. Noah was trembling with excitement. "Wait, that's not even the best part," she squeaked. "Watch what happens if I let go." My sister dropped the phone, and the charging symbol vanished. She picked it back up, and the charging indicator reappeared. At first, I suspected she was playing some sort of trick, but she repeated the action, and then again, and I realized I wasn't imagining things. The phone was charging itself, completely unassisted by a charger. Noah, being Noah, immediately assumed she had acquired some kind of superpower. My younger sister jumped to her feet and strode over to the television, poking the screen, but nothing happened. Then she tried the lamp on the stand and the PlayStation 4. Still nothing. I admit, I felt a surge of excitement for about a minute before I reasoned that there was likely a scientific explanation. And there was. According to an article I found online, electronic devices can indeed charge their batteries through various means without being physically connected to a power source. However, the author of the article noted that it typically wasn't enough power to make a significant difference. So why was Noah's phone actually charging? I watched the battery percentage climb from 10% to 16%. I chalked it up to a malfunction. It made sense if I really thought about it. The following day, however, defied all logical explanation. I was still half asleep when I awoke to my brother looming over me. "What is it?" Freddie waved the phone in my face. "Just read it." I did, skimming through the messages, each one sending my stomach into a deeper abyss. There was a vast expanse of gray messages from the recipient and only 2 blue messages from Freddie. "Skinned of flesh. It was gnarly. Miss Kane fainted and my mom had a panic attack. Skull completely pulverized. I can't believe I saw this man. What the hell? There are people guarding the scene now, but earlier you could just walk in. Animal, crazy psycho. The living room was covered in blood like a horror movie. My guy painted the walls. There was nothing left on the stretcher they brought out, just skin. There were blue sheets over the body, but there wasn't even a body. I think I saw a hand or maybe a foot, but they definitely weren't attached. I don't know. It was gross. Mom wants to send me to therapy. LMAO. My brother finally replied in blue. "Who was it?" "Sheriff's son," came the reply. "That kid is going to hell, and I'm an atheist. I hope he gets his karma because who does that? Wasn't he close to his pop? Jesus Christ. I can't get my head around it." Took a moment for the messages to register, and I was out of bed before my brain could catch up with my body. Then, in 3 strides, I was on my knees, gagging up dust. Freddie dropped onto my bed with a sharp intake of breath. "Didn't you know that kid?" he whispered. "That was Finn, right?" His words weren't fully sinking in. This time I threw up again. Something sour and slimy sputtered from my lips, my stomach heaving. "Are you okay?" "No." "Do you want me to help?" "No." I swiped at my mouth, but it kept coming. This time, it was the acidic lining of my stomach filling my mouth. "Did you check?" I managed to choke out, spitting out vomit. Did you check?" I repeated slowly, enunciating each word. To see if it was Finn? Oh yeah, it was him. All right, the cops already caught him. Apparently, he was trying to make a run for it. Freddy sighed. Maybe he was scared. It didn't make sense. How could Finn kill his father? He loved his dad. I barely knew the kid outside of his help getting into his father's office. But even then, I'd seen framed photos on Sheriff Novak's desk. I'd seen pictures of the two of them at Christmas and Father's Day, on vacations, and just casually hanging out together. In kindergarten, a boy had loudly declared that Sheriff Novak was a pig, and Finn had tackled him to the ground, nearly knocking the kid unconscious. Finn was tiny, wiry. There was no way he possessed the strength to tear his father apart. Damn, Freddy groaned, hanging upside down off the bed. He twisted his head to look at me, pushing dark red hair out of his eyes. Are we cursed? It was the first time I found myself nodding, my thoughts reeling. But that didn't stop me from trying to talk to him. According to Mom, Finn was being sent to juvenile detention at noon. Until then, he was being held downtown. Sheriff Novak was deceased, so the town's law enforcement was in a frenzy, trying to appoint a replacement. The station had been packed all morning before people slowly began to disperse. I seized my opportunity, slipping in with a group of frantic parents voicing concerns about their children's safety. While the woman behind the counter attempted to calm them, I ducked through the door at the back and into the holding cells. I expected guards. There were none. I figured the commotion with the parents had provided the perfect cover. The first thing I noticed upon stepping inside was the flickering light, not from the overhead bulbs. In front of the cells sat an empty desk with an open laptop. As I moved closer, I realized it was the laptop screen flickering erratically. When the bulb directly above me shattered, I jumped. Mara. Finn's voice was as flat and devoid of emotion as Seth's had been. I spun around and saw him standing behind the bars, his hands gripping them tightly. Very Silence of the Lambs. Finn adored horror movies, so I wouldn't have been surprised if he was jokingly reenacting a scene. However, that would have required him to display at least a shred of emotion. I wasn't sure what I had anticipated, but it certainly wasn't this. I expected Finn to be hysterical, weeping, swearing his innocence, proclaiming he would never harm his father. Instead, I was gazing at the face of a murderer, or at least half of one. His lips curved into a faint smile, but there was nothing behind it. Just like Seth, his eyes were concealed behind a pair of Ray-Ban sunglasses, expensive-looking ones that clashed with his plain short-sleeved t-shirt and jeans, both bearing the stains of his father's blood. As I opened my mouth to speak, his arms dropped to his sides. Aren't you going to wish me a happy birthday? The phantom sensation of spider legs crawling up my spine. I took an involuntary step towards him, my breath catching in my throat. It's your birthday? He nodded once. I turned 18 yesterday. Wish me a happy birthday. Happy birthday, I whispered. And did you? I killed my dad. Finn finished my sentence in the exact same monotone as Seth. No remorse, no hesitation, no indication of regret for his actions. I pulled out your lungs and cut off his head. I skinned him to the bone and dumped his guts in the toilet to hide them. But I shook my head, tears stinging my eyes. You didn't mean to. Finn cut me off, slicing through my spiraling thoughts. When is your birthday again? He asked, without a trace of curiosity. The question was simple, yet it sent me stumbling backward against the cold concrete wall. When is your birthday? Why? His expression remained unchanged. When is your birthday? June 23rd, I breathed. Finn remained still for a moment before slowly removing his Ray-Ban sunglasses. At first, I thought he was about to deliver some dramatic confession, like a character in a horror movie about to spill every grisly detail of his actions. Instead, the glasses slipped from his fingers, and I saw where his eyes should have been. Twin abysses of darkness stared back at me, somehow still alive. I couldn't stop myself from stepping closer, peering through the dim light of the cell. No, my perception was accurate. Finn's eyes were gone, gouged out from his sockets. The skin around the empty voids was ripped and discolored, the injury savage and brutal. "Happy birthday," he rasped, his voice flat and devoid of life. I flinched. Finn stooped, his hands fumbling for the spectacles, and carefully placed them back on his face. "For the 23rd, I meant." He then pressed his face against the bars, and this time, a disquieting, mirthless chuckle escaped him. His gaze remained vacant, yet his lips contorted into a smile that belonged to someone who had committed patricide without remorse. "I eagerly anticipate your arrival." That was my cue to depart. But as I attempted to shut the door firmly behind me, his voice echoed down the corridor. "And your brother." Finn's laughter escalated into a frenzied, almost animalistic sound. I could hear the sickening impact of his skull against the metal bars. "Don't forget your brother." I was promptly escorted from the sheriff's office and subjected to a 2-hour reprimand from my mother. Yet, even as I sat in the living room, surrounded by half the precinct while she berated me, Finn's words continued to reverberate in my mind. It wasn't until my mother pointed at me, her lips moving silently, that I jolted back to the present and received another lecture concerning privacy and unauthorized entry. I paid little attention, sitting cross-legged on the sofa next to Noah, who was feigning engagement with her phone. I finally broke the silence. "I believe it's the curse." The room fell into a stunned quiet. My mother appeared genuinely taken aback for a fleeting moment before shaking her head sharply. "That is not the topic at hand, young lady. Do you comprehend the gravity of this situation?" "Yes, Mara," Freddie interjected from the other side of the room. Like Noah, he was putting on a rather unconvincing act of not relishing every second of my interrogation. "I can't believe you would be so reckless and foolish." He paused. "Oh wait, didn't you trespass last month to pilfer documents pertaining to the Daniel case?" A smirk played on his lips. "That was likely illegal as well. But what do I know? I'm just a high school student. I don't sneak into the sheriff's office during school hours." I shot him a glare. "How do you even know that? Do you go through my phone?" He leaned back comfortably in the recliner with a shrug. "Your passcode is 4 zeros. A toddler could crack it." Whether it was the sheer stress of the encounter with Finn or my brother's infuriating smirk, I found myself lunging across the room, intending to, I don't know. He was larger than me, more powerfully built. He could easily overpower me if he chose to. Thus, what I anticipated as a physical altercation devolved into my attempts at landing a blow, while Freddie merely pushed me away with a dismissive snort. I did manage to connect with his nose, but that was the moment my mother intervened, separating us and shifting into mom mode. Mom mode signified extreme anger. Noah, deciding her role as an observer was complete, retreated to the kitchen. I was sent to my room, and Freddie received a lecture for provoking me. Several hours later, he appeared at my door bearing a half-consumed donut, a mug of hot cocoa, and a half-hearted apology. His way of expressing concern that I might injure myself. I accepted the donut and cocoa and told him to leave. He complied, lingering for a moment with a dejected expression before I closed the door in his face after he pointedly tried to elicit sympathy. I wished to discuss Finn with him, but I knew he would simply relay the information to our mother and get me into further trouble. Consequently, I was left grappling with a growing unease. My 18th birthday was fast approaching, and an increasing number of young people were turning against their parents. Following Finn's incident, Addie, then Jason, Sarah, and Kiara all experienced similar transformations within weeks of each other, having all turned 18. I braced myself for public outcry, expecting the town to label us remaining teenagers as monsters, proclaiming we should never have been born. To my surprise, however, there was minimal media attention. It became almost commonplace to hear of another young person being sent to juvenile detention. June arrived, and the days accelerated until it was the eve of my 18th birthday. I found myself in the bathroom, my trembling fingers clutching a razor blade. Every time I contemplated the act itself, envisioning slicing into my flesh until my wrists bled scarlet and my breathing grew shallow, I faltered. I discarded the razor in the trash and exited the bathroom, only to encounter Noah. Swathed in her pink bathrobe, My younger sister resembled a colossal marshmallow, her face partially obscured by wispy blonde curls. Mara. Noah's grin was as wide as ever. She clasped my hands, her grip firm. Do you recall our childhood tradition? Her expression left no doubt as to what she was referring to. On the eves of our birthdays, when our mother was asleep or away, the three of us would meticulously search her room for gifts. Though we had outgrown the practice, Noah insisted on at least one such search annually. It was hardly a choice I could refuse, given her sister's tenacious hold on my arm as she tugged me towards our mother's room. Upon entering, I discovered our brother already on his knees beneath our mother's bed, rummaging through boxes and bags. I was surprised Noah had managed to involve Freddie this year. As in previous years, he had merely rolled his eyes and dismissed us, calling Noah a baby. Yet, he now displayed the same enthusiasm as when he was younger. When he used to shush us and turn it into a game, I would take one corner, Noah would oversee the closet, and Freddie, being the only one unfazed by imaginary monsters, would crawl under the bed. For a moment, I considered walking away, dismissing their actions as childish folly. However, the prospect of forgetting the reality of turning 18 and potentially harming my family was appealing. In a way, I yearned to recapture my childhood. So, just as I had at 5 years old, I moved towards the furthest corner to search for non-existent presents. I knew they were non-existent because our mother always gifted us cash in a card. Nevertheless, the act of searching and rediscovering that childlike wonder was enjoyable. The thrill of moving items aside and delving into boxes for hidden treasures, whether dolls we desired or the latest gaming console. To please Noah, I shifted a few items, a smile forming on my face. Our mother was never particularly adept at concealing our gifts. I was about to voice this observation when Noah let out a squeal. I found something. Turning, I saw her partially inside the closet, one foot protruding, her head buried amidst our mother's clothing. She appeared to be reaching for something. Freddie, who had emerged from under the bed, straightened up and met my gaze. His eyes conveyed a clear question. Seriously? Are we a bit too old for this? We are, I mouthed back. His grin transported me back to when we were 9, and we had jointly discovered 5 wrapped presents and spent an hour shaking them to decipher their contents. Yet, there was also a flicker of excitement in his eyes as he joined Noah in front of the closet. Together, they managed to heave out what appeared to be a large box. I approached them hesitantly. Any idea what it is? I frowned at the box, which the two of them were struggling to hold steady. It was enormous, nearly filling the entire closet. Once Freddie and Noah managed to balance it, the three of us stepped back to take it in. Instantly, a chilling sensation coursed down my spine. Firstly, the condition of the box was concerning. Ancient. The cardboard was disintegrating. Noah shrieked as a swarm of insects scuttled out from the flaps. Upon closer inspection, it seemed to be a container for a toy or a doll. However, as I squinted, I realized the box was open. It had been open for a considerable time, and the longer I looked, the more nauseous I felt. A substance had stained the cardboard, an old, crimson hue painting the flaps and the interior. Suddenly, events unfolded too rapidly for comprehension. A blur of motion to my right, Freddie collapsing to his knees and retching violently, followed by Noah stumbling out of the room, her screams audible. I could see my brother heaving, but my gaze remained fixed on the front of the box. There, emblazoned on the front, was an image of me, Mara, smiling broadly. Colorful lettering was printed across the box. Now grows to full size. Mom's Net certified. The printed words seemed alien, though I could still read them. Child, TM. Have you ever desired your very own child? Well, now you can. Simply pull the cord and you possess your very own son/daughter. I took a step forward as something moved. Freddie yanked me back, but I was already venturing deeper into my mother's closet, discovering a considerably newer box. This one was sealed, containing a passenger. A fully grown, college-aged male peeked through the plastic packaging. This time, I noticed the cord, resembling an umbilical cord, connected to the dormant occupant within the box. His eyes were closed. Freddy, it read, this time in a college font. Before Freddy could see it, I hastily pushed it back, stumbling, my heart pounding in my throat. I frowned at the dark stain at the bottom of the second box when my brother grabbed my hand and pulled me backward. Before I could fully process what was happening, he was dragging me downstairs. I believe his intention was to get me away from there, but he stopped abruptly, freezing in his tracks. Following his gaze, I saw 2 birthday cards displayed on the mantelpiece. They were inscribed in my mother's handwriting. The purple card was mine. The pink one was Freddy's. I opened mine, but instead of a $20 bill, I found myself staring at a countdown projected onto my face in red light. 59, 58, 57. Below it read, "My dearest Mara, I am so happy I met you and was able to call you my daughter. I found you at 17 years of age, but you have given me a lifetime of cherished memories. You will be leaving very soon, and like the other mothers, I do not want to see you go. I am supposed to return you tomorrow, but we have each made a pact. With every child we acquire, every mother and father agreed that returning you to those people would be dreadful. Giving you to another mother would break my heart. Sweetheart, I have heard your biological mother has never stopped searching for you, and trust me, she will not find you. So I will not be returning you. I do not endorse the company I procured you from, but I have always wanted a child, and this town cannot have children. I have lost too many within me to hold on to hope. Happy birthday, my beautiful daughter, and goodbye." I'm unsure of the emotions that surged through me at that moment, but I finally understood why Finn, Seth, and the others had killed their parents. I had been mistaken. There was a motive. Rage. What the hell? Freddy dropped his card, his eyes wide. "We need to leave. We need to get out of here because whatever this thing is, it's going to explode." My brother shook me violently. "Are you listening to me? We need to find Noah and get out of here." Going to explode? I thought, my head spinning. Had Mom planted a bomb? There was no time to investigate. No way to escape. I nodded along with my brother, trying to locate Noah, who had vanished, when it struck me with the chilling clarity of ice water. Finn, standing in the holding cell, his eyes mutilated. Seth, wearing Ray-Ban sunglasses to conceal his eyes. Every other child I had encountered invariably wore glasses, always hiding their eyes. With the countdown reflecting on the wall and Freddy frantically urging me to find our sister, I wandered into the kitchen, opened my mother's prized knife block, and selected the sharpest blade I could find. It had been tormenting me ever since I witnessed the sheriff's son's disfigured face. Why would he do that to himself? Why would he kill his father and then gouge out his own eyes? A part of me truly believed it was a curse that had claimed them, some form of recompense. But I was wrong. Of course, I was wrong. Finn Novak didn't scoop out his eyes because he was insane. He carved them out because he had received that exact birthday card, that exact countdown. And somehow he had known, just as I did, as I stuffed my sweater sleeve into my mouth, that the bomb was an intrinsic part of us. Driving the blade into my eye and jerking it at an angle to sever it, I screamed into my sleeve, managing to sob, "Please, do the same for my brother." The countdown was still echoing in my mind, and if I concentrated, I could hear it. Beep, beep, beep. The entity sandwiched within me. Could have been either I or both, but I didn't have time to deliberate. I was already on my knees when I managed to extract my eye with the knife and then my fingers. When the beeping ceased, I pressed my face into the kitchen floor, breathing deeply, using my sleeve to staunch the profuse bleeding from my face. My vision was compromised, and I was quite certain I would be rendered blind, but it was preferable to being obliterated. Freddy was already in front of me, his eyes wide and bewildered, clumsily reaching for the knife to do the same. "We're okay," my brother hissed. He was already mimicking my actions, biting into his sleeve and holding the knife poised before his eye. Noah stood in the doorway. I could discern her silhouette, and just seeing her, I knew she was trembling, too terrified to approach either of us. I opened my mouth to reassure her while assisting Freddy in severing the entity within him. Then pop. I heard it first, an audible popping sound in my ear. Noah screamed behind me. Something warm struck my face, warm and red, coating my eyes and cheeks, wiping away the startling crimson from my face. I discovered glistening blood dripping from the walls, slick across the floor, the countertops, everything. I reached out for my brother, but he was no longer there. I don't care if I'm some artificially manufactured anomaly born at 17 years old. I've already ransacked my kitchen for the finest knives available, so I can locate my mother and father and inflict suffering upon them. All right, I don't know about you all, but that is absolutely not what I anticipated happening. I feel like every time I read one of Trash Tia's stories, that exact thing occurs. Like I'll think, oh yes, okay, this is somewhat making sense. I see the direction this is heading. And then, boom, something entirely different and unexpected, which I might be alone in feeling. That might just be me being oblivious to what's unfolding around me and what I'm perceiving. But I don't know. Let me know. Let me know if that happens to you when I read some of these stories. Especially Trash Tia, because as I mentioned, every time I read one of their stories, I am consistently blindsided and thoroughly surprised. In any case, a huge shout out to Trash Tia for once again delivering a banger. And a shout out to my channel members. Thank you so much for your support of the channel. If you all wish to further support the channel, that link is in the description. However, it is entirely optional, not at all required. And with that said, I don't know. See you all tomorrow. Yes, I will see you all tomorrow. Thanks for watching. Peace.